everybody. I haven't made a video in a while, so I thought I had a couple of things that I was thinking about here lately that I just kind of wanted to make a video about. This last weekend, I saw the movie Selma, and of course, Monday being Martin Luther King Day, I was thinking back on a lot of these things. Of course, as Jehovah's Witnesses, we taught other people that once you cross over into that threshold into the kingdom hall, that any racial differences or any racial problems were left at the door. It didn't affect, or the idea is it didn't affect the congregation. And it doesn't take long to figure out excuse me, it doesn't take long to figure out that that's not true. And really it's a controversial subject, because living out in California, it wasn't as much of a problem, even though it still existed. It really wasn't a big issue. But it is where I'm living here now in the Southeast. But what's funny was my father, when he finally became a witness in 1950, he had already been exposed years before, but he didn't get involved until later on. And he found out that in the South, the kingdom halls were still segregated. And that was a new thing for him. I mean, he was a little ignorant of the situation at that time, dealing with Jim Crow laws. He didn't understand that because he was raised in Los Angeles, and being during the 30s, that really wasn't that big of an issue. I guess it depended upon where you lived, what areas you lived. But he was in East Los Angeles. That's where he grew up. He went to one of the worst high schools down there. But at the time, it wasn't that bad. So he really he didn't understand that. So when his father told him that the kingdom halls were segregated, he flipped out. Because he didn't like that stuff. He wasn't brought up that way. Even living during the times of the Depression, and where that thing was still really bad, racism was an issue. He wasn't that way. He wasn't raised that way. It just wasn't his personality to be that way. And the same thing with myself and my brother. We're not that way either. And anyway, he had decided he was going to come out. He was going to come out in this part of the country and set everybody straight. And my dad was the type of person that he set his mind to something, he was going to do it. And he was really serious. He was going to come down here and give everybody what for. Because after all, if you're a Christian, you have no right to act that way. You have no right to think that way. And why in the hell would you actually have segregated kingdom halls, right? And this was his idea, but his father stopped him, and he says, no. You don't understand. It's the law. There's nothing you can do about it. And that's the issue. That's sort of the thing that comes to my mind now, is there's nothing you can do about it. Well, is there really? Look at Martin Luther King. Now, yeah, the man was a womanizer. Some say he even plagiarized a lot, if not all, of his speeches. I personally don't believe that. However, let's face it, he wasn't perfect. Nobody is. But the man was trying to do something right. And not just him, there was others. Others that were doing the same thing. And of course, that gave rise to the whole Civil Rights Act. And if it wasn't for that, you call that rebellion, because you're rebelling against the established society, the structure of that society. And the idea is that it's not working, it's broken, it's hurting certain people. You have to rebel against that to make things right. Let's face it, nobody's going to make things hunky-dory for everybody all the time. You got to have somebody to come up and with dissension to make things right for all people, no matter who they are, what their status of life is, where they came from, what their background is. And a person like that is doing a good thing. And so my dad had a good intention. But when my grandfather said there's nothing you can do about it because it's the law, well, why not get involved in something like that? Because you're trying to make something right. And as Jehovah's Witnesses, we were taught that's not something to get involved in. That's taking sides, following political ideals that bother our neutrality, so to speak. But it doesn't mean, you might not like it, but you got to go along with it. And I don't agree with that. I think that's kind of stupid way of looking at it. And to my shock, I mean, it really shocked me when I moved out here into the Southeast in the early part of the 2000s. I found out real quickly that the kingdom halls were segregated all the way through the 1970s. Sometime in the, I can't remember when, but I think it might have even been mid-late 70s. Kingdom halls were still segregated. Okay, so Jim Crow laws were abolished in the Civil Rights Act in 1964 and in 1965. That stuff was done away with. Out the window. No more. It doesn't mean that people weren't still prejudiced towards others or acted badly towards them, but there was, those civil rights were established that made it illegal to do things like that. And churches were already being segregated, not much, but they still were. But the kingdom halls were not at that time. And I was shocked to find that out. That why in the world would they continue to do that after this stuff has been abolished? I mean, 10 years, perhaps more. It was still going on. And I heard a particular brother that lives in this area, not in this town where I'm living, but in another one, an older brother in the Kingdom Hall, that actually, when they decided to segregate in their town, he had his idea at the time was, okay, we'll let them in, but you just make sure they don't nasty up the place. Now, what kind of crap is that to say about somebody? That blew my mind, and it makes me wonder, why in the world did the Watchtower not get involved in that? I understand the neutrality position, I really do. Even though I don't think it's an ideal situation, I don't believe that it's that's something that you can stay away from and just say I don't get involved. You can't do that. It's just not right. But I understand the idea behind it. You're promoting something else. You just don't want to get involved. But the Watchtower Society did get involved in a lot of other pursuits. How many times have they gone to the Supreme Court with certain things? They went to the Supreme Court to allow us to allow witnesses to go preaching from door to door. They had to go there to do it on Sunday, to be able to go out on Sunday. People didn't like that. People in the community did not like witnesses coming, and they would make a fuss about it. They took it all the way to the Supreme Court to be able to get witnesses allowed to go preaching on Sunday. They took to the Supreme Court the idea of becoming conscientious objectors. The brother that was instrumental in doing that, a lawyer for the society that was instrumental in getting the right to keep from having to go into the draft because of religious reasons, was the same man that helped Muhammad Ali to keep from having to go to prison himself when he decided he wasn't, when his number came up to join the military back in the 60s, he didn't want to do it, and that same brother helped him to keep from having to go into the army. And they're willing to do something like that, but they're not willing to go to bat for somebody's rights, a group of people that are being oppressed. The Jews were oppressed at one time. They did something about it eventually. Yeah, it lasted a long time, but look how people have been treated in this country. And I don't like to use the term African Americans, because these people are Americans, just like me. I mean, I can say I'm a European American because most of my background comes from Europe. But most people like me are going to say I'm an American. A black person is going to say the same thing. I am an American. And why do we have to label each other? Why do we have to put people in certain classes and act as if I'm better than you, or my race is better than your race, or whatever? So there has to be a stand against stuff like that. And the society failed to do that. They had it in their ability to make a representation, to put something right. And yeah, during those times of civil rights, people lost their lives. But when it comes to the greater good of humanity, it's a risk that you have to take. I don't really want to get involved with something that might cause me to lose my life, but I sure am going to stand for something that I believe in. I certainly will, because it's only right. That's the way I feel. That's why I'm sitting here talking to you guys about this now. This is really something that's important. And especially now, you know, it's ridiculous. Personally, I think that President Obama has done some good things. Yeah, there's some things he's done that I don't agree with either. And some of you out there might not agree with him at all. Might not like his policies. Well, that's fine. If you don't like his policies, you don't like them. That's just your way of thinking, and that's fine. That's perfectly fine. But to get on places, on discussion boards, if you look on discussion boards where they talk politics, people don't like Obama, and the things that they say in there are not just because of his policies that they don't like. They talk about him personally and attacking him as a black man, or a black man trying to be white, or a white man trying to pretend that he's part black or whatever. You'd be surprised at the stuff they say. So they're not attacking him and disliking him for his political stand, the fact that he's a Democrat or whatever, or his bad decisions that he may have made on certain things. It's because he's black. And because of that, racism is shown that it still exists, as ugly as it's ever been. And despite what's happened during the times of Jim Crow laws, despite the slavery issue and how that went on for a long time before it was abolished, how people were treated after slavery was ended in 1865, or maybe it was before that, I can't remember. But the whole point is it's still a problem. And I'm really afraid to say, but I'm going to say it, that it's still going to be that way. It'll never go away. I just don't think that it will. Not any time in the near future. And that saddens me to say that. It really does. It saddens me for my children and who they are, what they represent. They fall into a class where they might be rejected one side or the other just because of their mixture. And that's sad. It really is. So I take a stand. I do. I will not hold back from saying anything. And I'm ashamed of the Watchtower for not taking that stand. Christ Jesus did not discriminate against people, whether they were sick, Samaritans, people like that. He did not discriminate against them, and that is just not that's just not right. Whether you wish to, whether you still have Christian beliefs or whether you've done away with it, that type of attitude that people have had over the centuries is just not right. And we can fight it all we want. It probably, like I said, it'll never go away. But that doesn't mean I am not going to stop talking about it, stop fighting about it. Till the day I die, I will continue to do that. I don't agree with it. But the rest of you out there, I would love to hear your comments or read your comments on this. Please put something there. I would love to hear your thoughts on it and what you think about it, and really think about taking a stand against it if you realize that, or if you're not already doing that yourselves, to really look into it, because it's getting bad. And I've seen it here where I'm living now. And I've even actually been a part of being singled out just because of my involvement as a white person, being in a mixed relationship. It has even affected me, and I can't say that I have been nearly affected as other people in the way they've been treated. It's just not good. So that's my thoughts for the day, and I would really love some feedback on this. Please respond, or if you agree or disagree. I would love to hear from those of you who disagree, just to hear your thought or read your thoughts, and because I'm open-minded with everybody, You can have your opinions, that's fine, but let's find out what the reasons are and why it's that way. Why is there so much hatred for stuff like this? I don't understand it. And I was slapped in the face with it when I was a child, and it blew me away, and it still does. And I'm almost 45, and it still affects me. I just don't get it. But please comment on this. I would love to hear what you got to say. And for all of you out there, thanks for watching, and I wish you peace. Y'all be blessed.